UX Podcast Episode 276.
You're listening to UX Podcast, coming to you from Stockholm, Sweden.
Helping the UX community explore ideas and share knowledge since 2011.
We are your hosts, James Royal Lawson.
And Per Axbom.
We have listeners in 200 countries and territories in the world, from Sudan to Kazakhstan.
From time to time, we will bring you a repeat show. This is an episode from our extensive back catalog, resurfacing some of the ideas and thoughts from the past that we believe are still relevant and well worth revisiting. Just come out of a fantastic workshop with Denise Jacobs, and she's sitting right here with us. So,
woo!
Welcome to the show.
Thank
Denise.
you. Thank you for having me.
That was just a
nice to be
chock-full interactive workshop with so many exercises and stuff. So, but we're not tired. We're energized.
Yay! And that was the goal.
That's the wonderful thing about this. I mean, when you work with yourself and these types of exercises, you learn to accept yourself more. It's fantastic.
Just to kind of get a little catch up for people who don't know what your workshop was. It was Unfold Your Brain.
That's what it's called. Yeah, and I am I like to call myself a speaker, author, and creativity evangelist.
Wow.
And so I love it when people are just like, "Is that religious?" And I'm like, "No, not really."
But you get these spiritual.
Oh yeah, I see what.
But you get these spiritual feelings. Really.
There is that. Well, so that's why I was like, I actually used the word evangelist like deliberately in the way of like kind of feeling like, I'm spreading the good word. Yeah. The good word about creativity and like kind of inspiring people to feel more comfortable with their creativity and more conversant with it and more like they really want to like take their creativity and use it and really kind of reach their potential, like reach their creative potential.
One of the big parts of the first half of the workshop was about your inner critic and banishing your inner critic and imposter syndrome, which we've talked about on the show.
Yeah, we did an entire show on that. Yeah.
So how do you banish your inner critic?
Very carefully. Well, so I'm actually writing a book called Banish Your Inner Critic. Yeah. And that will be coming out for official release in January of 2017, but there'll be like a kind of unofficial release.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
In the fall, like in the late fall, like November, late October, early November. So that's what we're shooting for, which means I got to get cracking on the chapters. I've only written 2 out of 11. But you know what? That's what the summer's for.
Yeah. That's what constraints are for.
That's what time constraints. If I didn't have the deadlines, probably wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
So in one of the things I talk about in the talks I do and in the workshops and then clearly also in the book is that it's a process. And, of course, you're just like, I want a solution. I don't want to hear it's a process. I want it's a solution. But it is a process. And banishing your inner critic, I think, comes from, first of all, self-awareness, knowing that it's there, knowing how it shows up for you, because there are different forms of the inner critic. I just touched upon a few of them in the workshop, but there are even more that I will go into more detail in the book. Denying your creativity, being anxious about deficiencies that you have, having fear of being judged, fear of failure and fear of success, and having like an upper limits problem. And so there's a lot of different ways that it can show up. And so that self-awareness of kind of knowing, okay, this is that version, and then having the tools to deal with it when it comes up, instead of feeling like, because what happens is we end up feeling blindsided a lot of times, right? And it just comes up out of nowhere, and then you're just like, and you're just paralyzed. But I feel like when you, first of all, you know it's going to come, like, here I go, embarking upon something. It's going to show up at some point in time. So I just need to be like armed and ready. Like I just need to have the tools. And so that when it shows up, okay, here's imposter syndrome. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
This is what I can do for imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm getting in perfectionist mode. Okay, this is what I need to do because I'm being in perfectionist mode. And then when you have the tools and you have everything kind of at your ready, then it's like you don't feel as kind of put upon or blindsided, like I said, and it's easier to deal with, and then you can move past it more quickly, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely the case with things like imposter syndrome. We talked to a lot of people who had no idea that was a concept.
Yeah.
They just thought it was them.
And they were so happy to know that there's a term for it and everybody else feels it too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think when you know that, and then again, like I said, when you know, like I love the thing that I have coined the imposter syndrome paradox, which is you can't feel like an imposter unless you actually are qualified.
Yes.
And when you have that, you're just like, oh, okay, I'm just doing that thing.
Yeah.
And then you can stop doing that thing, or you can move on, you can focus on something else, you know? That's always great.
And you also said there are some times when you actually need your inner critic, like during editing.
Which I think is also really helpful, where you're just like, I don't need you now, but just come back in like a day.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're like, oh, that's a really good sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not so strong. Okay, we need to change this. And when you're in editing mode, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry, you're just all looking at me now. I was waving as I was going to ask a question. Sure, of course I am. This second part of the workshop, and then I'm saying second part for me. It felt like the second part. We're moving more into the focus aspect things and looking at how the brain works and coming into or getting focused and getting closer to flow. I think it was interesting to reflect on. You didn't say to everyone, "Look, you've got to get to flow." You kind of felt like you were being quite careful of saying, closer to flow is probably good enough to set your creativity flowing.
And not only that, but it's one of those things. A flow is one of those elusive things where you actually can't plan it. Flow is one of those things where you can set up all of the conditions for it, and that's what you need to do. Like, can you get to it? Like, just by saying, okay, I'm going to go into flow. No, not necessarily. But if you get all the conditions in place, you're more likely to reach it than not.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, okay, well, here's what you do to get to the place where you can have flow.
Yeah.
Are you going to get there necessarily? I have no idea. But if you have these conditions, you're more likely than not to reach it.
I think, but it's nice because one of the problems with the whole thing about you need to be in flow. That's where all your creativity happens. Then you create anxiety and stress if you can't get to a point that you feel is flow. So by kind of like saying it's all right. We don't need to necessarily be in the zone all the time. But if you get yourself
close.
a little bit closer, then you're...
And just by closing your eyes, breathing, not multitasking. I mean, there are small techniques you can just tend to and get there faster.
And really effective.
Yeah.
And like one of the reasons why I like to talk about the brain science is to show, and I don't think I said it explicitly today, but to show that essentially our brains are actually hardwired to be creative already. Like, for us to not be creative, we actually almost need to be working at odds with the way our brains work, right? And so when I say, like, look, all you need to do is breathe and relax, like, oh, okay, wait, I can do that. You can take a shower. I can do that. Lay down.
I like the lay down. The lay down one I like.
The lay down is awesome. You're just like, wait, that's all you need to do?
Yeah.
You just lay down, just be prone, and like my brain will automatically start to go in alpha brain mode. What?
Do you know what? When you actually said that about laying down, I instantly in my head got a picture of like walking to like a park or a field nearby and just laying down on a summer's day and kind of kind of
looking at the
closing
clouds.
eyes even.
Yeah,
then suddenly I was kind of closer to flow just by thinking about doing
and
that.
It's true, and it's like we don't realize that it's not as elusive as we make it out to be. And like I was saying at the beginning, so many things of the way that work is structured and the work environments are structured, actually totally make it so that we can't get to that place as easily.
There's very low acceptance to lying down on the floor at work, which is a problem.
It's a problem.
You need to realize that it's those moments that actually increase your happiness and productivity and efficiency in the long term.
If someone finds you underneath your desk, lie down underneath your desk, they're going to be kind of, are you okay?
Yeah.
Well, you had a great tip when you just changing your how you work at your desk, like facing south, facing north, and do different things in those situations. And you can prime your brain into doing different stuff in that
right,
way.
and like, okay, this is the
Yeah.
place where I used to do that at work. I'd be like, okay, this is the place where I work on reports. This
Yeah.
is the place where I try to come up with ideas. This is the place when I work on my computer. And it seemed to help, because then it's like I started like, okay, this is where I'm like trying to like troubleshoot stuff, or brainstorm things, and it worked out great. I was going to say something you said earlier, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was a really great, idea. It's a great concept.
So we just can like plus you on that and say, oh, that was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
That was really, really
yes,
good.
And
Yes, and to give you that boost of energy.
thank you.
I was going to talk about one of the exercises. I don't know which exercise I was going to talk about now, because we did about 10 exercises maybe in our workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
right.
did quite a few, about 3 per section, 3
Yeah.
or 4 per section.
I mean, reflecting about the very end one. The very end one that we did was you grouped us into 2 sets of people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can describe it as your.
Well, so I got it from somebody else,
Yeah.
actually. So I want to actually tell the background
Yes.
story to that,
Please.
which is I took a workshop with Lisa Nichols, who, if you haven't heard of her, I like to think of her as the sister in The Secret.
Okay.
She was like the only black woman in The Secret, like all these like experts on, law of attraction and stuff like that. And there's like one black woman, hey, what's up? So that was Lisa Nichols, but she's like well known for like a lot of transformational work, coaching, blah 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 blah. Less that coaching, but more like transformational work and motivational speaking and things like that. And I went to a workshop of hers several years ago called "Speak and Write to Make Millions," which I'm still working on the millions part, but I have actually did start speaking, and I did start writing after I went to that workshop.
2 or
So
3.
something worked.
It's good. 2 or 3 is
Something
good.
worked. So, but we did that exercise in that workshop, and it was so powerful to do it, and like not know what was coming, and to have all these people come up and say these lovely things to you.
Yeah, because we were in 2 groups, and one group was stood randomly around the room with their eyes closed, and then the other group wandered round and gave nice compliments,
Wonderful
compliments in
Now-
your ear, whisper them into your ear.
And now the interesting thing is that the way it's structured is that what you're supposed to say is something that you've wanted to hear yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I deliberately, because the last time I did the workshop, I forgot to do this, and the results kind of differed a little bit. But so I, for the group that's standing with their eyes closed, that's receiving the information, I say, don't think about what the person says. Just in your mind, just say thank you.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. Just say thank you. Like, don't think about the structure of the workshop and how it works and how the exercise works. Just say thank you. And I think when you do that and you're in this receptive place, it comes and it lands better, like inside of you in your psyche. And I personally is my favorite exercise. And I always have people just like afterwards, usually are just like, that was really intense. It's really intense.
It's a
very
very
And then actually,
strange
that
feeling,
for me,
actually. I was
it was
surprised.
close to a spiritual experience
Yeah.
almost, because people came up and were whispering, and you didn't know when they were going to come up and whisper to you, and they said things like, "You're awesome," and
You
I've,
do really
I've
great
always
work.
admired your work, and I was like, really? And then I caught myself,
Right.
and it's like,
Thank
and
you.
yes, thank you, and
Yeah.
it's just I was smiling,
Yeah, I found
ear
myself,
to ear.
I found myself smiling all
Yeah.
the way through, and you stood there, and because you can, it's such a,
Yeah.
you feel floaty. So you're there, eyes are closed, stood in the room, and you can hear whispering in the background. You can feel people walking past you, and then suddenly a voice will whisper in your ear a compliment,
Yeah.
and then you reply with. So it kind of like they kind of fade in from nowhere, these little compliments, and then vanish again. It's really quite odd.
shivers, yeah.
beautiful. And
But
it's
it
lovely.
does make you smile, like you said.
Yeah.
I'm smiling all the way through
The
it.
smile, and I've had people cry.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've had people like just get teary. I've had people like be speechless afterwards. I was actually the very, very first workshop that I did this in. I did it, and it was in Amsterdam, and it was a conference, similar to this, and people came from all over the world and everything. And one of the attendees was a gentleman who was Japanese who worked at Sony in their design department. And afterwards, I mean, it's like, like Japanese culture and all this stuff, like totally like kind of at odds with all this, like very different and very, structured and everything. And he was like, afterwards, he couldn't even kind of articulate. Like, he just was like, that was just, I mean, I just feel like that was, that was just,
Yeah.
and it was like, that's like, he was just like, that was just so, I just feel like.
Yeah, you're like a child now that has gotten the best present ever and can't articulate it.
Can't even articulate it, and it was just so like I was so touched by that because I was just like, wow, like I really hit
got him.
hit a nerve there,
Yeah.
and I love that. I love that exercise so much because it just is so powerful. It seems so simple on the outside, and it's very powerful, and I think it's very touching.
And you really have to bring it home with you, because, I mean, the purpose is also to understand how valuable it is to give feedback to others. Always, on your team, at home, your friends, family, anyone. Just give that positive feedback, and magic will happen.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's actually quite a nice crescendo end to the workshop, though, because you've been kind of built up and kind of like been saying, yes, you can do this, yes, you can do this kind of thing, maybe, and then you get those compliments in your ear, and then we finished off with sharing something we'd like to achieve in 5 months, I think.
5 months, yeah.
Said, yeah, and swapping contact details with the person next to us. But for me, I mean, at that point, I'm ready to go. I'm kind of saying, thank you, good night, I'm off here now, because I want to get on with it. You've reached that point of feeling like you can and should be able to do things.
That's great.
Which is good.
That's great. That was the intention. That was the way it was designed.
Oh, we have to get out of the room pretty soon, so we'll wrap up, I think.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been really, really nice talking to you, Denise.
Thank you for
Yeah, thank
having
you.
me.
And now we're joined by both Chris Nocelle and also Denise Jacobs.
We got both of them in the same room.
That's
And
right.
you two guys started off the Speakers' Day yesterday. Both of you talking around creativity, you might say. People are doing exercises straight away. That's pretty uncommon for a keynote, I think.
It is.
And the amount of exercise, we did 3 exercises, and everybody got up and paired up and challenged each other.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic experience, and everybody did. That's a huge audience as well, 550 people.
There's a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easier when they pair up.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't have to try to make like small groups or anything like that. But there's 2 people, they partner up. One person's a storyteller, one person's a listener. The storyteller has to create holes in the story so that the listener can give them words, either a noun or a verb. And the listener can look at the screen and see a list of words that they can give the storyteller. And the wonderful thing, I give a premise for the story, and then they have to start talking. And I have never seen, that's the exercise where I have seen the most laughter, the most fun, the most, people just really engaged with each other and everything. The one time I saw somebody who looked like they were in pain doing it was when I was in Israel, and there was a woman from, I don't want to say Croatia, Slovenia, some kind of Eastern European country, and I'm a bit embarrassed that I don't remember exactly which country she was from, but she was from a country where my guess is that she wasn't encouraged to do this kind of thinking. So whenever time I was doing it with her and I was the storyteller and I was giving her I was giving the holes, and she would be like, and she'd look at the list, and I said, just read down the list. And she's like, but it doesn't make sense. I was like, it doesn't matter. Just give me a word. I'll work with it. And she'd be like, but then the story won't make sense. I was like, okay, you try it. And then she'd do it, and then she'd give me a word. She'd be like, but I don't understand. I'm like, but it doesn't, the story doesn't work. And she was so frustrated with how it didn't seem to make sense, that you really wanted it to make sense.
That is interesting.
She hadn't bought into the gameplay. They hadn't bought into your world that you described.
It was really interesting. She and kind of going along with Brad's talk on body language, very much so standing there, with her arms crossed and her legs crossed and everything, like kind of like really like, scrutinizing the whole thing. Like but I want it needs to make sense. But aside from her, just about everybody else I've seen do this has had loads of fun. And so it was wonderful to look out upon the kind of the sea of the audience and see laughing and just the chatter, the rise of the sound in the room was just lovely. I work with this woman, Jessie Sternschus, who has a company called the Improv Effect. And we met each other and were just kind of like, oh my God, you're my new best friend, because she's funny and everything, but she's got this company where she uses applied improvisation to help with trainings on team communication and ideation and all of this stuff. So we were like, oh my God, we do completely complementary work. Let's work together. And it was basically through her that I got turned on to applied improvisation. I had talked about it a lot in my workshops, but I didn't really have a background in improvisation. I had never done it myself. I just was like, this is a really great idea. But then through knowing her and wanting to do more improv-related things, that's when I started taking improv classes. And everything, and then going to the Applied Improvisation Network conference, and it's really changed. So it was also through seeing some of her talks and how she incorporated improv exercises into her talks. I was like, I can do that too.
Right.
Watch this. And it's really, I feel like it's really, then I found this really nice sweet spot now where, I can still have the kind of delivery that I want to have and the high energy, but then I get all this interactivity and people connecting with each other and everything during the talk. So then it's not just about me up there yapping, but about people having this experience.
Chris, but you in your talk as well, you included some exercises. 2 opening talks that included exercises.
Improv, isn't that like, it's an example of the mechanics behind being creative. You start even out with slaughtering a sheep and taking out liver and reading the liver, shocking us into attention.
And using a stone to map the results.
Say that word again,
haruspication.
Oh.
And the marvelous word of the person who does the haruspication is the haruspex.
I have to say, I love the name exercise.
It's a fun one.
Oh, yeah.
Totally swiping that, by the way.
This was
totally taking that and putting that in my workshop.
Name tail.
Yeah, the name tail was the hashtag. It's I believe I picked this up from the Oulipo, the French literary tradition. It was one of the techniques they used to generate characters or stories. The technique is to take a person's name and break it down into smaller chunks.
So I took Per's name, because I was sat next to Per, so Per Axboom.
Per Axboom.
Yeah, exactly. So I did this Per, like the fruit, and then axe boom, as in bong.
Okay. How did you combine the pear, the axe, and the boom?
A story about an exotic fruit tree that was accidentally chopped down, and the resulting unexpected explosion flattered an entire town.
Lovely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and you could imagine like a whole series based on that. Like, what would the world do if we had explosive fruit? Like wars would break out.
Fruit trees.
It would become a controlled substance, but then some people would want fruit salad made with that, like the thrill seekers. So yeah,
Orchards full of
and I was
trees.
And I was actually thinking of the George Washington and like what would have happened to George Washington. Chopped down that, like what that would have meant for the history of the United States.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
If that's
Things
the way,
would have been different.
Completely different. The world after George Washington chopped down the cherry tree.
But the beauty of that exercise, because your talk was compared to Denise's talk, which was about creativity, or you talk about how you can generate that kind of creativity in yourself. Your talk was looking more about how we can use machines to maybe help us, just nudge us along a little bit and be creative.
So creativity. I mean, yeah. So we have these tools for creativity, but why are we paying so much attention to it? Why is it so important? What problem are we trying to solve with creativity?
Well, actually, I just spent a whole week writing a chapter.
Oh, nice. Well done.
About at least one of the reasons why I think creativity is important. So, Chris, if I may get in there and talk about it. So, So in my book, Banish Your Inner Critic, that's coming out at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. One of the things that I say that it's really important, there's this really interesting relationship between the inner critic and flow and creativity, and then basically, in my mind, what you can do with it when you kind of get to that point. And I was saying this in the workshop the other day, but that there's this, there's kind of this generally accepted concept that creativity is like in your right side of your brain, and then the left side of your brain is analytical and all that stuff. What they're starting to think about, what scientists who study brain scanning and imagery and stuff like that, what they're finding is that creativity is less about what side of your brain is activated, and it's more about what parts of your brain are activated or active or quiet. And so brain scanning has actually shown that when people are creative, when they're doing like improvisational jazz or rap or doing other things that really involve creative stuff, the part of your brain that's the self-monitoring, the self-judgment, self-control, all that stuff, that part of your brain is quiet. And then that allows for the other really expressive parts of your brain to like light up and to start doing stuff. Self-monitoring, judgment, control, and everything equals the inner critic, right? And so they basically say that creativity is more about the quieting of the inner critic,
right,
and less about, your right brain is active or whatever. It's fascinating stuff. So for me, I feel like when you do that, also they found that that's the part of the brain that's quiet when you go into a flow state. What? Right?
Yeah.
So, aren't you guys glad that I'm giving you sound effects?
Yes.
Yeah. Saving so much time.
Don't have to add them.
Don't have to add them at all. We were going to put a bomb sound in, but Denise did it for us. So I think it's really interesting because basically the more, one of the premise of my book basically is the more you banish your inner critic and that you reach flow. So then when you're in flow state, really cool things about flow is that people who go into flow are like happier and feel like more empowered in their lives and feel like life is worth living, basically. And they also have the ability to go into a flow state more easily because basically their brains are starting to be wired towards that, and that the effects of flow last for up to a day or two after you go into a flow state, which again, right?
That's a long time.
It's wild, right? But it's like then you are already in that mode. So when people are happy and satisfied and feeling empowered, then I feel like then you feel the ability to take on bigger tasks, right? When you feel empowered and stuff like that, you're like, what else can I do? That was great. I did that. What else can I do? What other problems can I solve? What other ways can I put my brain to work in a way that's going to get me back to that place that I felt so amazing? And I think that's why creativity is important, because by kind of harnessing the power, like our creative power, we can actually do really great stuff in the world. We can solve bigger problems. We can make better things for more people. We can help more people. I think that's one of the reasons why creativity is important.
Wow.
Yeah. Nothing to sneeze at. My yes and... See that?
There we go.
Shout out.
Yeah.
What?
High fives across the table.
There are two things like why I think having the mechanisms for creativity are important. No, I'm going to add the third. The first is that your muse works most of the time. Well, one's muse hopefully works most of the time. But when she fails and you are paid to be creative, what do? It's unprofessional to just sit there and go, I don't have it today. I got nothing.
Someone's expecting you to press the creativity button.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
And my assertion is that there is a creative button if you can backfill that button with these techniques. So one reason why creativity is important is as a professional, you're paid for it.
Yeah.
The second is that we're an aging population, and being creative is harder as you get older. It was Dick Werman. So Richard Saul Werman recounts in one of his earlier books the tale, perhaps apocryphal tale, of children who are in third grade. When asked what the dots on the chalkboard mean, all raise their hand. They've got, oh, it's an owl's eye, it's a planet, oh, those are stars,
Yeah.
that's a bowling ball. But by fifth grade, no one will raise their hand because that they're aware that there's a right answer. So we have the dual problems of a socialization against creativity,
Yep.
that there is a right answer,
Yep.
and as we age, it becomes more and more difficult. This is the cognitive bias that I spoke about, or even less than a bias, just a sad fact of the world, is that as we age and gain experience, those experiences override other possibilities because we know and we latch onto what we know works.
Chris, I totally hijacked what you were saying. You said there were three things. You said two.
The fact that it's more difficult to be creative as you get older.
Yeah.
The fact that we have it socialized out of us.
Yes.
And oh, that's the third one. One of the delightful things, if you've read Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, he notes that consciousness is not an expansive tool.
Right.
It is his word is a reducing valve that is there to prevent us from processing all of the information that we are receiving at any one moment, as well as remembering everything that we could be remembering at one time. It is sobering to realize that your consciousness is there to stop you from being creative. It is there to get you focused on survival and reproduction. So
It's not a bad thing to focus on.
No, it's not a bad thing.
Or at least
in its place. But that notion that, oh, hey, we are working inside of a system that is fighting against us. I think it's important to have that skill, just to recognize the bias of the tool we have and know how to overcome it.
Yeah. It's very true. We've learned a lot about that in recent years, just the whole kind of reptilian brain and how it totally owns us.
Yeah.
And this bit at the front that we're all kind of interacting with is actually not really the thing.
It's like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So it's all about then bringing down your brain to a lower level of consciousness, almost like when you're meditating, and like your examples when you're taking a shower and just getting away from the problem arena, and that's when the problems solve themselves because your brain is actually working,
It's already working
on
on
it
Yeah.
by itself.
It's all the chatter
in
that's
your
the
subconscious.
way. It's like static. You know, the way I like to think about it is that it's like static, much like on, you know, back, remember when there was radios and dials and things? But when you were trying to find a station, you know, it's like, and then boo, to really come in, and the music will be really clear, and then you get off of that channel just a moment, the frequency is just a little off, and it's static again. And I think what happens is we are operating most of the time in static, and we are just not on the station. Right, like we are just not getting the information's there. We're just like a few frequency points away from it, and so, you know, in a lot of ways, calming your brain and relaxing it, and, you know, deliberately removing the chatter is like tuning yourself to the correct station so you can get the information.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you
welcome.
for having
Yeah.
us.
Just being around these people is just really inspiring, and I think you need actually sometimes to be there to feel the energy, and having been part of these exercises that we've been part of with these two, I mean, it's just life-giving in some way.
We were a little gushing excited, I think, during our chat with Denise in the beginning there.
Yeah, I
but
think
we
so.
were really still, even though it was quite a while after we'd had the workshop, it was hours, and we were still really high from it, I guess.
Exactly.
I'm going to really try and lay down more.
Calm yourselves, calm your nerves, and I think a big takeaway that I keep hearing over and over now is let your brain do the work for you. Think about the problem and then do something else.
Yeah.
And the solution will come to you. But one of the things that I'm also going to take away with me was what Chris was saying about when experience overrides creativity. Like when you get older, you rely on experience to do stuff. You don't rely on your creativity to do your stuff.
Because your natural creativity falls as you get
Exactly.
older.
You think that this is the way stuff should be done because I've always done it like this. What Denise spun on that is you had to realize, oh shit, so a lot of the stuff that's been invented today was invented by people who had no idea what they were doing, but we take them for granted anyway. Just question everything. This is what I'm going to keep doing.
Lay down and question everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. This podcast has been a repeat show from our archives. Let us know which of your favourite episodes from over the years you think we should repeat for more people to listen to.
Remember to keep moving.
See you on the other side. How do pirates express their creativity?
I don't know, James. How do pirates express their creativity?
Art.